Picture two people who are both 54 years old. I think about this more than I probably should. One of them wakes up slowly on a Tuesday morning. Sunlight comes through the window, coffee in hand. No rush, no urgency, no invisible calculator running in the back of their mind. Work feels optional. Decisions feel calm. Life feels spacious. The other one wakes up at 3:17 a.m., and before their feet even hit the floor, they're reaching for their phone in the dark. Bank app, retirement calculator, quick mental math, how many years left? How much more do I need? What if the market drops? What if I didn't do enough? Same age, same economy, completely different emotional reality. And the part that unsettles me is this: by your 50s, the direction is mostly set. Not because one of them got lucky, not because one was smarter, not because one worked harder, but because of quiet decisions made decades earlier. The difference between people who relax in their 50s and those who panic does not suddenly appear at 50. It accumulates, slowly, almost invisibly. Most people assume the gap is income. They imagine one earned more. But I've seen high earners stressed out of their minds and moderate earners sleeping peacefully. So it can't just be money. The real difference is structure. You can earn a lot and still feel fragile if your lifestyle expands every time your salary does. You can earn a normal salary and feel secure if your expenses stay controlled and your investments compound quietly in the background. The relaxed version of you didn't necessarily earn dramatically more. They built margin. Margin is the gap between what you earn and what you require. Margin is optionality. Margin is breathing room. The panicked version often built something else instead. They built commitments. Bigger mortgage, higher car payments, more fixed expenses that require consistent income to sustain. None of it felt reckless at the time. It felt earned. It felt like progress. It felt normal. But those decisions stacked into pressure. And pressure compounds too. Calm at 50 is engineered. It's not accidental. It's built through runway. Runway is how long you could operate without income. Runway is how flexible your life is when something changes. The relaxed 50-year-old built runway slowly and intentionally. They automated investing early. They kept fixed expenses lower than peers. They increased investments when income rose instead of immediately upgrading lifestyle. They weren't trying to look wealthy. They were trying to feel stable. The panicked version treated every raise as permission to expand. Upgrade the apartment, upgrade the car, upgrade the identity. And the dangerous part is it feels like you're winning while you're doing it. But time doesn't fix structure. It amplifies it. If your foundation is solid, time strengthens it. If it's fragile, time exposes it. And by 50, exposure feels very real. Here's where it gets more psychological. The relaxed version often saw themselves as an allocator early. The panicked version saw themselves as an earner. That identity difference changes everything. An earner thinks if I need more security, I'll just make more money. An allocator thinks if I need more security, I'll build systems that work without me. Earners feel pressure to keep producing. Allocators feel control because their capital compounds independently. By 50, that difference isn't theoretical, it's emotional. One person feels dependent on constant output. The other feels supported by past discipline. Lifestyle creep quietly widens the gap. You get a raise, you upgrade. It feels harmless. But every new fixed cost narrows future options. Optionality is what creates peace later in life. The relaxed version didn't avoid enjoying life. They just avoided permanent escalation. They built resilience alongside experience. They assumed markets would fluctuate. They assumed energy wouldn't always be infinite. They assumed careers would shift, so they prepared before it felt urgent. The panicked version often told themselves they'd catch up later. Later becomes expensive. 10 years of delay isn't just 10 missed contributions. It's an erased doubling cycle that doesn't hurt in your 30s, it hurts in your 50s. What fascinates me is that both versions of you can look identical in your 30s. Same job, same social life, same vacations, same Instagram highlights. But underneath, one is reducing dependency and the other is increasing it. One is simplifying, the other is layering complexity. Complexity compounds, simplicity compounds too. Complexity creates maintenance and stress. Simplicity creates clarity and flexibility. By 50, flexibility feels like freedom. The relaxed version didn't try to impress people. At 35, they tried to sleep well at 55. That line changed something in me, because the real luxury later isn't a bigger house, it's peace. It's waking up without financial math racing through your mind. It's knowing your structure works even if income slows. And here's the uncomfortable part. Panic at 50 rarely comes from one catastrophic mistake. It comes from drift, small compromises repeated for decades. I'll increase investing next year. I'll build savings once things settle. This upgrade won't matter. None of those choices feel dangerous in isolation. That's why they're powerful. They don't set off alarms. They quietly shape trajectory. And trajectory determines outcome. Two people at 35 can have similar incomes and net worth, but one is trending toward expansion and the other toward compression. The difference doesn't show up in numbers immediately. It shows up in optionality later. The relaxed version reduced fragility. Fragility isn't just low savings. It's when your peace depends on everything going perfectly. When your job must keep paying. When markets must cooperate. When nothing unexpected can happen. The relaxed version built buffers, emergency savings, investments, transferable skills. They built slack. Slack feels unnecessary when life is stable. Slack feels essential when uncertainty arrives, and uncertainty always arrives. They also let competence compound. They built depth instead of chasing constant acceleration. There's something calming about depth. It makes income durable. The panicked version often chased speed, bigger moves, faster wins. Volatility feels exciting in your 30s. It feels dangerous in your 50s. The relaxed person slowly reduced the amount of risk they needed to take to feel progress. Their base was strong enough that they didn't need to swing wildly. Another subtle shift is comparison. The relaxed version stepped off that treadmill earlier. They stopped optimizing for perception and started optimizing for autonomy. They were willing to look average if it meant feeling stable. The panicked version kept chasing perception. And perception requires maintenance. Maintenance requires income. Income requires effort. Effort requires energy. And energy changes with time. If your lifestyle depends on maximum output forever, pressure grows exactly when you want relief. The relaxed version built systems that would carry more weight later, investments that grow quietly, lower overhead so work becomes optional. They aimed for durable calm. And durable calm changes how you move. You're not reactive, you're not desperate, you're choosing. The panicked version often lives in reaction mode. Reacting to bills, reacting to timelines, reacting to shortfalls. Reaction is exhausting, design is peaceful. The difference between relaxing and panicking at 50 isn't about a specific number. It's about compression versus expansion. The panicked version feels compressed by obligations and timelines. The relaxed version feels expanded in options and time. Expansion is built slowly, almost invisibly through repeated decisions. If you're in your 20s or 30s right now, you still hold the most powerful lever available. Time. Time multiplies structure. Time multiplies direction. If you drift, time amplifies drift. If you build carefully, time amplifies strength. You don't suddenly wake up at 50 as one version or the other. You reinforce it gradually. Every raise, every upgrade, every investment decision, every moment you choose status over stability or stability over status, it stacks. And that's strangely motivating. Calm isn't reserved for lucky people. It's built by intentional ones. You don't need perfection. You need direction. You need to widen the gap between what you earn and what you require. You need to protect runway. You need to treat peace as a financial metric. When I imagine myself at 50 now, I don't picture a specific car or house. I picture waking up without financial anxiety. I picture knowing my structure works even if income slows. I picture having options. And that image is more motivating than any upgrade could ever be. The difference between people who relax in their 50s and those who panic isn't mysterious. It's cumulative, it's structural, it's psychological, and it's built quietly while no one is watching. The only real question is which direction you're reinforcing right now. And there's another layer to this that I don't think people fully grasp until it's almost too late. When you're in your 20s and 30s, 50 feels abstract. It feels distant. It feels like a future version of you that barely exists. You think you'll be wiser, richer, more established by then almost automatically. But what actually happens is more subtle. You slowly become who you repeatedly act like. If you repeatedly expand every time income rises, you become someone who needs constant growth to feel stable. If you repeatedly invest and build margin, you become someone who requires less to feel secure. And by your 40s, the pattern is set. I've noticed that the real turning point isn't 50. It's somewhere in the mid-40s when time suddenly feels finite. When retirement stops being theoretical and becomes a calculation. That's when the compression begins for some people. They open spreadsheets. They estimate timelines. They realize the runway isn't as long as they assumed. And if structure wasn't built earlier, panic creeps in quietly. It doesn't announce itself dramatically. It shows up as background tension. It shows up in conversations about money that feel heavier. It shows up in the way you respond to market volatility. It shows up in the way Sunday evenings feel before another work week begins. The relaxed version of you reaches that same mid-40s moment and feels something different. They feel confirmation. They see the system working. They see investments compounding. They see expenses under control. They feel less urgency, not more. That emotional divergence fascinates me, because both versions may have worked hard. Both versions may have sacrificed. But one sacrificed for expansion, the other sacrificed for stability. And stability compounds into calm. There's also something people don't talk about enough. Energy declines before ambition does. You may still want the same things at 50, but you don't want to chase them with the same intensity. The relaxed person anticipated that. They assumed their future self would value flexibility more than growth. So they built toward that future preference. The panicked version optimized for maximum growth in the present without equal attention to resilience. And resilience is what protects you when ambition shifts. I think about this personally. It's easy right now to justify pushing everything to the future. It's easy to say I'll get serious later. But later compounds the same way investing does. If you delay discipline, you compound delay. If you reinforce structure, you compound structure. It's not about perfection, it's about trend. Are you trending toward greater dependency or greater independence? That's the real question. And most people never consciously ask it. They just respond to what feels good in the moment. Another difference I've observed is how each version relates to fear. The panicked 50-year-old is often highly sensitive to downturns. Market drops feel existential. Job instability feels catastrophic. They can't afford volatility because their structure doesn't allow it. The relaxed 50-year-old experiences the same volatility but interprets it differently. They've built enough buffer that volatility feels like fluctuation, not threat. That psychological difference is massive. It changes how you sleep. It changes how you show up at work. It changes how you interact with your family. And here's something even more interesting. Confidence compounds too. When you consistently invest, consistently manage expenses, consistently protect margin, you build evidence. You build proof that your system works. That proof turns into confidence. And confidence reduces fear. The panicked version often lacks that accumulated proof. They've pivoted too many times. They've paused too often. They've expanded without reinforcing foundations. So when uncertainty arrives, there isn't enough internal evidence to stay calm. And doubt fills the gap. I don't think panic at 50 is about greed. I think it's about regret. Regret compounds quietly. It's the thought of what could have been if you had started earlier. If you had increased contributions instead of upgrading lifestyle. If you had stayed invested during downturns. Regret is heavy because you can't go back and add more time. Time is the one asset that doesn't compound once it's spent. That's why this matters so much, not because you need to be ultra wealthy by 50, but because you cannot buy back runway. You either build it gradually or you realize too late that it isn't there. And I don't say that dramatically, I say it realistically. The relaxed 50-year-old didn't avoid mistakes. They avoided repeated drift. They corrected course early. They noticed when expenses crept up and adjusted. They noticed when investing slipped and automated it. They paid attention to trajectory. Trajectory is subtle, it's not dramatic. It doesn't make for exciting stories. But it defines outcomes. I've started thinking about money less as a number and more as a stress amplifier or a stress reducer. Every financial decision either increases future stress or decreases it. Every fixed expense you add slightly increases pressure. Every investment contribution slightly decreases future dependency. The effect is small at first, but over 20 or 30 years, small stress reducers accumulate into calm. Small stress amplifiers accumulate into tension, and by 50, that accumulation becomes emotional reality. There's also the social layer. In your 30s, ambition is praised. Hustle is praised, upgrades are praised. But in your 50s, nobody celebrates the person who looks successful but feels anxious. And nobody sees the quiet discipline that built the calm person. That's why this is so deceptive. The visible rewards often go to the wrong behaviors early. The invisible rewards show up later, and you have to decide which scoreboard you're playing on. The short-term scoreboard updates constantly. The long-term scoreboard updates slowly but decisively. I want to be honest with myself about that, because it's easy to chase the fast feedback. It's harder to build for the slow one. But when I imagine being 50, I don't imagine applause. I imagine peace. I imagine not needing to calculate how many more years I have to work. I imagine being able to say no to things that don't align with my values because I'm not financially cornered. And that freedom doesn't show up accidentally. It shows up because earlier decisions created margin. Margin is underrated. People talk about net worth. They talk about income. They talk about assets. But margin is what determines how it feels. Two people can have identical net worth and completely different emotional states depending on their fixed costs and dependency level. That's the part most people miss. Wealth without margin still feels fragile. Moderate wealth with margin feels stable. And stability is what becomes valuable with age. If you zoom out even further, the difference between calm and panic at 50 is really about respect for time. The relaxed person respected time early. They understood that consistency beats intensity. They didn't try to compress wealth building into a few dramatic years. They let decades do the work. The panicked version often underestimated time. They assumed they could accelerate later. They assumed income growth would solve structural issues. But time doesn't forgive structure, it magnifies it. And magnification is neutral. It magnifies strength and weakness equally. That's what makes this conversation powerful. Because you don't need to overhaul your life overnight. You need to shift direction slightly and let time multiply it. If you start widening the gap between what you earn and what you require, time multiplies that gap. If you start investing consistently, time multiplies that consistency. If you reduce fragility slowly, time multiplies resilience. By 50, you won't remember the specific dinners you skipped or the upgrades you delayed. But you will feel the difference in your nervous system. You will feel whether your structure supports you or compresses you. And that feeling is the real outcome. So when I ask myself what kind of 50-year-old I want to be, I don't focus on status. I focus on emotional state, calm or compressed, flexible or trapped, choosing or reacting. And the only honest way to influence that outcome is through the small, unglamorous decisions I make right now. That's the uncomfortable truth and also the empowering one, because it means the path to calm isn't mysterious. It's built quietly, consistently, one decision at a time.